Okay, today I'm going to go through and show you guys how to work a piece of material using basically only a single branch of the actual material. Often that you find yourself in a situation which isn't so ideal, that you obtain a piece of material that has some real nice features down by the actual base of the trunk, and then when you get up towards where the actual foliage is or the branch placement is, it quickly drops off hill. And that's pretty much the case of what's happened with this material. Before we actually go through and show you where we're going to take this material and start beginning to walk through the steps of where to take the actual material, I really think we need to go back and look and examine how we got to this actual point. So yesterday I started going through the actual tree and realizing that somebody's already done some work on this tree, that other than the first couple of bends within the trunk, the tree shortly went downhill from there. There was a very long straight trunk after the bends, which created a very stove type effect. There was multiple bar branching and branching originating from a particular point on the actual trunk. Above this was reverse taper, bad wire scarring from where somebody's actually done the work before, and in quite a few instances there was actually wire still left on the tree that it's now been embedded within the actual branching. So at that point I decided really a lot of this actually had to come off, and the best solution was just to start looking for really a way out within the design of the tree, which in this instance I found within the actual first branch. Now these choices really shouldn't be made that lightly, that you really have to go through and consider the health of the actual tree, what kind of material it is, if the branch you're reducing it down to, and going to make the design off, is this actual branch something that you can work with and doesn't have enough material to actually do the job that you're looking to do with the tree. I figured that it did, and at that point I went ahead and decided that if I tilted the tree, the design would work really nice. It would give me a nice continuation of the trunk. I started to create a shari running up the front of the trunk, and quickly realized that there was actually a dead vein right there where I created the shari, which allowed me to actually make the shari wider. And really I think that brings us up to speed with where we're at. But before we begin doing the actual work on this tree, I'd like to introduce another kind of design concept that I found very useful when working a piece of material from raw stock. And that is, well, let me step back for a minute. In the last video I just recently did regarding a Foemina Juniper and its styling, I actually discussed how when you're doing your first style, if you actually treat the tree as like you're trying to solve a mathematical problem, actually going through and addressing one issue that the tree might have at a time within the actual tree, and little by little working each one of those issues out, that in a lot of ways the tree would begin to style itself. So in this video I'd like to introduce another concept, and that is the idea of designing smartly. And I say this not to be coy, I say it because in a lot of ways it makes a lot of sense. When you're making choices on a tree and trying to determine the fate of a piece of material and bring it to, from a state of a piece of raw material to a first style, the choices you make in a lot of ways really can determine how much effort you are going to actually have to put into the tree long term. And often you'll hear people say it's not about how much actual time, it's just doing the tree justice, and whatever it takes, it takes. And I mean, obviously this is totally true, but there comes a point where some of the choices that you're making can really drastically affect how much more time you're talking about here, really. And I think that this whole concept of like going through and trying to design smartly that I'm talking about is, you know, really a process that continues on from the trying to solve a tree mathematically, like what I was saying before. Obviously with this tree, we've gone through and realized there were certain issues that we had to address, that, you know, we didn't like the areas up here and everything, and that we wanted to work with possibly this branch right here. But that choice wasn't really made lightly, really. It was one of those things where I actually went through and looked at what this branch actually had, figured out if there was actually anything I could use. It would have been better to use something above and try to resolve the issues in it, rather than trying to resolve the issues with this branch. You know, the issues in the branch perhaps right above might have actually resulted in me spending less time using it instead. Just makes, you know, stepping back for a moment, really analyzing what's going on in the material, making the smart choices of, is there stuff that I can actually use within this particular branch perhaps? Should I keep this branch because of that? Or is there a better branch that has better material, you know, better, finer branches, better foliage that I can use instead? By making those choices and solving those problems, you're already cutting your time down. So then it's a matter of how do we put this new concept into actual practice? The concept being designing smarter to save us actually more time, perhaps in the long term. So our trunk is obviously comes up. It has some nice movement. This is the branch we plan on using the continuation of the trunk as. We can obviously, you know, bend it up if we wanted, bring it down, whichever. We have a first branch eye here that's kind of, it's actually thinner than our next branch, which is right here. If we wanted to actually use this as the first branch, right off the bat that's going to tell us that because this one is thinner than this one, and we want the taper of the tree with lower branches being thicker and smaller as they get up, that we're going to have to spend more time thickening it up and actually allowing it to grow out some to get a, you know, so that the branch may actually end up being thicker. The second branch, this branch, if we were to actually bend it up, we start to see now with the continuation of the trunk that we've got almost some real nice movement kind of going here. So with this branch, if we were to bend it up, we might actually be able to establish kind of a nice apex and a continuation of the trunk with it. When we move to these other branches, you know, we could actually bring them down if we wanted, put this one up as an apex and bring these ones down to create some nice real branching and padding in this area. If we go this route, which is would be a very nice route with this branch being the apex, it would make a nice continuation of the trunk. Pardon me, these branches over here being lower down. This area, if we chose to use this branch as our apex, well, this area, as you see, would have to then end up being kind of have some work done on it, because a lot of these branches are really fine right through here. They're just starting out their life off as kind of branches. So these right here would have to grow out. Now, we can obviously take this branch and bend it up more up into like an upright kind of position, and perhaps use this branch, maybe even eliminate this one. We could possibly keep it, you know, it's like I said, it's smaller, so it'll take more effort, but we could, and maybe use it, but we could bend the trunk up and bring this branch perhaps right in here and make a first branch with that, which is a feasible solution. And then basically this would end up having to be designed up here with our apex here. So I think both would make really nice designs. It's a matter of personal opinion to some degree, but if you're designing smartly, another concept to think about is then, okay, so we have our, if we bend this up, we have a first branch over here. What are we doing about other branches and branches over here? And we do have a couple branches that are right in front. They're right in front, so we might have to actually do a little bit of bend movement, but those could actually be brought down into an area right over here, and then the rest of it been actually wired up into a place over here with an apex over here. Something else, this choice of the fact that this lower branch is thicker than that one. So if we wanted to use this as our first branch, we would have to spend time growing that out. That's going to take some time. If we wanted to use this area over here as our lower branching and make this the apex of our tree, this area is going to take some time. This area down here is going to be resolved, but this area is going to take some time because we have no branches yet really established here. So they're going to have to allow those to grow out. If we chose to use this area over here as our apex, bend this over to our lowest branch, this branch is already the thickest one out of the lot of all the branches here. So it being our lowest branch, it already logically in a lot of ways makes sense because it's already there. We already know that this is the extension of the branch. This is the very end of this branch. So a lot of the energy is being sent out to here. There's a lot to work with here. There's all kinds of branching actually still up in this area, and a lot of foliage that if we were to take that and make that our apex, we've got a lot of the work already complete. And by bringing this up to be our apex and using this as our lower branch, we're 90% in a lot of ways already done with the actual finished almost style of the tree in a way. That really then it's just a matter of going through and perhaps working on ramification, you know, making some areas work a little bit better than that they already do, but we're already that much further along. So really in a lot of ways this whole concept of designing smartly can have drastic effects on how long and how far you can go with a piece of material just by making, you know, by the choices you make.